Good day, everybody. This is Yin Yang in California with Morsels of a Thought number 1503. Today we're reading about compassion. Today is Words and Wisdom Wednesday, and I like to give you stories or quotes from other people to give you morsels of a thought of wisdom for the day to inspire you to have a great day and impart something that you can say was part of your culture or education. And we will bring wisdom into the world, morsels of a thought of wisdom. When you know the right thing to do, it is wisdom, and when you do it, it is virtue. So we're going to bring more virtue into the world. We're bringing more virtue into the world. I want to read about compassion today, and Hans Christian Andersen wrote the little story of the little match girl. You've read that before. To feel another's anguish, this is the essence of compassion. Here is a Hans Christian Andersen masterpiece, a simple, tragic story that stirs pity in every child's heart. It was dreadfully cold. It was snowing fast, and was almost dark as evening came on, the last evening of the year. In the cold and the darkness there went along the street a poor little girl, bareheaded and with naked feet. When she left home she had slippers on, it is true, but they were much too large for her feet, slippers that her mother had used till then, and the poor little girl lost them in running across the street when two carriages were passing terribly fast. When she looked for them, one was not to be found, and a boy seized the other and ran away with it, saying he would use it for a cradle some day when he had children of his own. So on the little girl went with her bare feet that were red and blue with cold. In an old apron that she wore were bundles of matches, and she carried a bundle also in her hand. No one had bought so much as a bunch all the long day, and no one had given her even a penny. Poor little girl, shivering with cold and hunger, she crept along, a perfect picture of misery. The snowflakes fell on her long flaxen hair, which hung in pretty curls about her throat, but she thought not of her beauty, not of the cold. Lights gleamed in every window, and there came to her the savory smell of roast goose. It was for it was New Year's Eve, and it was this of which she thought. In a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected beyond the other, she sat cowering down. She had drawn under her little feet, but still she grew colder and colder. Yet she dared not go home, for she had sold no matches and could not bring a penny of money. Her father would certainly beat her, and besides it was cold enough at home, for they had only the house roof above them, and though the largest holes had been stopped with straw and tags, there were left many through which the cold wind could whistle. And now her little hands were nearly frozen with cold. Alas! A single match might do her good if she might only draw it from the bundle, rub it against the wall, and warm her fingers by it. So at last she drew one out. Whisht! How it blazed and burned! It gave out a warm, bright flame, like a little candle, as she held her hands over it. A wonderful little light it was. It really seemed to the little girl as if she sat before a great iron stove with polished brass feet and brass shovel and tongs. So blessedly it burned that the little maiden stretched out her feet to warm them also. How comfortable she was! But lo! The flame went out, the stove vanished, and nothing remained but the little burned match in her hand. She rubbed another match against the wall. It burned brightly, and where the light fell upon the wall it became transparent like a veil, so that she could see through it into the room. A snow white cloth was spread upon the table, on which was a beautiful china dinner service, while a roast goose, stuffed with apples and prunes, steamed famously and sent forth a most savory smell. And what was more delightful still and wonderful, The goose jumped from the dish with knife and fork still in its breast, and waddled along the floor straight to the little girl. But the match went out then, and nothing was left to her but the thick, damp wall. She lighted another match, and now she was under a most beautiful Christmas tree, larger and far more prettily trimmed than the one she had seen through the glass doors at the rich merchants. Hundreds of wax tapers were burning on the green branches, and gay figures, such as she had seen in shop windows, looked down upon her. The child stretched out her hands to them, then the match went out. Still the lights of the Christmas tree rose higher and higher. She saw them now as stars in heaven, and one of them fell, forming a long trail of fire. "Now someone is dying," murmured the child softly, for her grandmother, the only person who had loved her and who was now dead, had told her that whenever a star falls a soul mounts up to God. She struck yet another match against the wall, and again it was light, and in the brightness there appeared before her the dear old grandmother, bright and radiant, yet sweet and mild and happy as she had never looked on earth. "Oh, grandmother," cried the child, "take me with you. I know you will go away when the match burns out. You too will vanish like the warm stove, the splendid New Year's feast, the beautiful Christmas tree." And lest her grandmother should disappear, she rubbed the whole bundle of matches against the wall. And the matches burned with such brilliant light that it became brighter than noonday. Her grandmother had never looked so grand and beautiful. She took the little girl in her arms, and both flew together joyously and gloriously, mounting higher and higher, far above the earth, and for them there was neither hunger nor cold nor care. They were with God. But in the corner, at the dawn of day, sat the poor girl, leaning against the wall, with red cheeks and smiling mouth, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. Stiff and cold she sat, with the matches, one bundle of which was burned. She wanted to warm herself, poor little thing, people said. No one imagined what sweet visions she had had, or how gloriously she had gone with her grandmother to enter upon the joys of a new year. So that was the little magical story. We have read that before. We've seen it when we were children, and it was so sad to see the claymation story I saw when I was in the first grade. I saw that. Okay, so Androcles and the Lion, retold by James Baldwin. This ancient story is another, more slightly complicated version from the fable of the lion and the mouse. Here, the human element is introduced. Its appeal lies in the fact that Androcles the slave can feel compassion at another's pain even though he himself has been so cruelly mistreated. It is a unique human capacity to be able to put oneself in the place and point of view of another. In the end, his own kindness sets him free. In Rome there was once a poor slave whose name was Androcles. His master was a cruel man and so unkind to him that at last Androcles ran away. He hid himself in a wild wood for many days, but there was no food to be found. He grew so weak and sick that he thought he would die. So one day he crept into a cave and lay down, and soon he was fast asleep. After a while a great noise woke him up. A lion had come into the cave and was roaring loudly. Androcles was very much afraid, for he felt sure that the beast would kill him. Soon, however, he saw that the lion was not angry, but that he limped as though his foot hurt him. Then Androcles grew so bold, and he took hold of the lion's lame paw to see what was the matter. The lion stood quite still and rubbed his head against the man's shoulder. He seemed to say, "I know that you will help me." Androcles lifted the paw from the ground and saw that it was a long, sharp thorn which hurt the lion so much. He took the end of the thorn in his fingers, and then he gave a strong, quick pull, and out it came. The lion was full of joy. He jumped about like a dog and licked the hands and feet of his new friend. Androcles was not at all afraid after this, and when night came, he and the lion lay down and slept side by side. For a long time the lion brought food to Androcles every day, and the two became such good friends that Androcles found his new life a very happy one. One day some soldiers who were passing through the wood found Androcles in the cave. They knew who he was, so they took him back to Rome. It was law it was the law at that time that every slave who ran away from his master should be made to fight a hungry lion. So a fierce lion was shut up for a while without food, and a time was set for the fight. When the day came, thousands of people crowded to see the sport. They went to such places at that time very much as people now go to see a circus show or a game of baseball. The door opened, and poor Androcles was brought in. He was almost dead with fear, for the roars of the lion could already be heard. He looked up and saw that there was no pity in the thousands of faces around him. Then the hungry lion rushed in. With a single bound he reached the poor slave. Androcles gave a great cry, not of fear, but of gladness. It was his old friend, the lion of the cave. The people who had expected to see the man killed by the lion were filled with wonder. They saw Androcles put his arms around the lion's neck. They saw the lion lie down at his feet and lick them lovingly, and they saw the great beast rub his head against the slave's face as though he wanted to be petted. They could not understand what it all meant. After a while they asked Androcles to tell them about it. So he stood up before them, and with his arm around the lion's neck told how he and the beast had lived together in the cave. "I am a man," he said, "but no man has ever befriended me. This poor lion alone has been kind to me, and we love each other as brothers." The people were not so bad that they could be cruel to the poor slave now. "Live and be free!" they cried. "Live and be free!" Others cried, "Let the lion go free too, but give both of them their liberty." And so Androcles was set free, and the lion was given to him for his own, and they lived together in Rome for many years. You know, um, I've seen footage of lions jumping around like dogs. They actually do that sometimes. So I'm going to read one more story, and then we're going to go to the barrel. Little Thumbelina. This story is a shortened version of Hans Christian Andersen's Thumbelina. Thumbling. Like the fable of the lion and the mouse, it teaches little children how to have big hearts. Once upon a time, there was a little girl no bigger than her mother's thumb, so they called her Thumbelina. Thumbelina did not sleep in a little white bed as you do. Her bed was half of a walnut shell. Her mother covered her with pink rose leaves for blankets when she curled up for a cozy nap. By and by, when Thumbelina had grown large enough to run about wherever she wished to go, she started for a walk one beautiful sunshiny morning. She had not gone very far when she heard something come hoppity skip behind her. She turned around, and there she saw a great big green grasshopper. "How do you do, Thumbelina?" he said. "Wouldn't you like to go for a ride this morning?" "I should like it very much," said Thumbelina. "Very well, hop on my back." "Hop up on my back," said the grasshopper. You know, it's funny how the grasshopper knows her name because there's ESP there, extrasensory perception. In those days, the fairy tales seemed to say that people had psychic powers or something, and the grasshoppers, especially the animals, especially had psychic powers. So Thumbelina hopped up on his back, and away they went, hoppity skip, through the grass. Thumbelina thought it was the finest ride she had ever had. After a while, the grasshopper stopped and let her get down off his back. "Thank you, Mr. Grasshopper," said Thumbelina. "It was very good of you to take me for a ride." "I'm glad you enjoyed it," said the grasshopper. "You may go again some day. Good-bye." And away he went, hoppity skip through the grass while Thumbelina went on her walk. She walked on and on until she came to a river, and as she stood on the bank looking down into the shining water, a fish came swimming up. "How do you do, Thumbelina?" he said. "How do you do, Mr. Fish?" said Thumbelina. "Wouldn't you like to go for a sail this morning?" asked the fish. "Yes, indeed," said Thumbelina, "but there is no boat." "Wait a moment," said the fish, and he flirted his tail and darted away through the water. Presently he came swimming back to the bank, and in his mouth he held the stem of a lily leaf. "Step down on this. It will make a fine boat." Thumbelina stepped down on the lily leaf and sat carefully in the middle of it. The fish kept the stem in his mouth and swam away down the stream. Overhead the birds were singing, along the bank the flowers were blooming, and over the edge of the leaf Thumbelina could see fishes darting here and there through the water. So they sailed and sailed down the river, but at last the fish took her back to the bank again. "Thank you for the sail, Mr. Fish," Thumbelina said as she stepped off onto the bank. "I never had such a good time in all my life." "I'm glad you enjoyed it, Thumbelina. Goodbye for today." The fish darted away through the water, and Thumbelina turned to go home. Just then Mrs. Mouse came running up. "How do you do, Thumbelina?" she said. "Won't you come home with me and see my babies?" "I'd love to," said Thumbelina, and she clapped her hands in glee. Mrs. Mouse's home was quite a way down under the ground. Thumbelina crept through the long, dark passageway to the cozy room in which Mrs. Mouse and her three babies lived. They all ran races up and down the long passageway, and Thumbelina tasted the dried peas which Mrs. Mouse had brought home with her. "I think I must go home now," Thumbelina said at last. "My mother will be wondering where I am." So she said good-bye to them all and started off home. She had not walked very far along the path through the field when she heard something saying "Heep, heep" in a weak, sick little voice. Lena looked, and there beside her, close in the grass, she saw a little bird. His eyes were shut, and he looked very sick. "Why, what's the matter, little bird?" said Thumbelina. "Oh, I have a thorn in my foot, and it does hurt so." "Let me see," said Thumbelina. "Perhaps I can help you." She looked carefully, and there she saw the thorn sticking in the poor bird's foot. She took her little fingers and pulled it out as gently as she could. Then she fetched some clear, cold water and bathed the wounded foot. The bird felt so much better that he opened his eyes. "Why, it is Thumbelina," he said. "How did you know my name?" said Thumbelina in surprise. "That's easy to explain," said the bird. "My nest is up in a tree close beside your window. I often hear your mother calling you, but you are not a long way from home. Are you not a long way from home?" "Yes, I am," said Thumbelina. "I was hurrying home when I found you." "Well," said the bird, "if you climb up on my back, I'll take you there far more quickly than you can run." So Thumbelina climbed up on the birdie's back. "Hold on tight," he said, as he spread his wings and flew swiftly up above the tree tops. He went so high that sometimes they skimmed along through the clouds, and so fast that Thumbelina could hardly get her breath. But still she thought it was very wonderful, and she was not a bit afraid. Soon the bird lit right in the window of Thumbelina's own room. She climbed down off his back and thanked him for bringing her home. Then she ran away to find her mother to tell her all about the wonderful things which had been happening to her that day. Isn't that great? That is so cute. That is so, so cute. Good job. Good job. Okay. What I wanted to read to you. number 39 and number 40 of Lao Tzu. Now, it's spelled as though you say Lao Tzu, but actually, I think what happened was when somebody said Lao Tzu, Tzu, they meant T-Z-U, Tzu, Tzu, you know. So it's actually Lao Tzu. That's why it's spelled Z-I in the new system. Z, Z, friends, Z, 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 friends. Z, Z. That's how. Lao means old, Zi means person. Lao Tzu. Um, I think so. Anyway, number 40 first. Return is the movement of the Tao. Yielding is the way of the Tao. All things are born of being. Being is born of non-being. We have to have opposites. Number 39. In harmony with the Tao, the sky is clear and spacious. The earth is solid and full. All creatures flourish together, content with the way they are, endlessly repeating themselves, endlessly renewed. When man interferes with Tao, the sky becomes filthy, the earth becomes depleted, the equilibrium crumbles, creatures become extinct. The master views the parts with compassion because he understands the whole. His constant practice is humility. He doesn't glitter like a jewel, but lets himself be shaped by the Tao, as rugged and common as a stone. Sit like Buddha. Good morning, Miss Horse Cantata. How are you? I just read two passages from the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. Tao means the way. De means virtue. Jing means script. By Lao Tzu. Z, z. All right, so I will talk to you again later. And see you tomorrow. Okay? Oh,